Imagine this. You're sitting in a conversation, trying to convince someone of your idea, but no matter how much logic you throw at them, it's like hitting a brick wall. You try a different angle, maybe raise your voice a little, or add a few facts, but the resistance is the same. Frustrating, right? Now picture this. A few carefully chosen words leave your lips, and suddenly the person across from you starts nodding. They agree. They're persuaded. You didn't push harder. You didn't overwhelm them with facts. You simply spoke to something deeper. How is that possible? What if I told you there are specific phrases that can instantly break down those walls and open up a real dialogue where your ideas are embraced, not resisted? The truth is, persuasion isn't about dominating a conversation or having the most airtight logic. It's about connection, empathy, and knowing the right psychological triggers to unlock someone's openness. In this video, I'm going to share 6 phrases that work like magic, not because they're manipulative, but because they're grounded in human psychology and respect for the other person. But before we dive into those phrases, let's take a step back and look at persuasion through the lens of Stoicism. The Stoics, particularly philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, believed that persuasion wasn't about bending others to your will. Instead, it's about aligning with virtue, truth, and understanding the nature of human emotions. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control others' reactions, but we can control how we present our ideas and remain anchored in reason, patience, and empathy. In persuasion, this means speaking in a way that resonates with others' emotions, values, and understanding of the world, all while maintaining your integrity and emotional balance. Let me tell you a story. 1. You're right. That makes sense. Years ago, I was working with a client who seemed impossible to persuade. No matter what I suggested, he had an argument against it. I could feel the tension building as I pushed back, my ego wanting to prove that I knew what I was talking about. But then, something clicked. Instead of fighting harder, I paused and said, "You're right. That makes sense." I'll never forget the look on his face. It was like all the frustration drained out of him. In that moment, the dynamic shifted. He no longer saw me as someone trying to win an argument. He saw me as someone who understood his perspective. And just like that, he started listening. What's the power behind this phrase? It's validation. People crave it. They want to feel heard and understood. When you acknowledge that someone's point of view is valid, it doesn't mean you're conceding defeat. It means you're creating a space where they're willing to hear your side. Once they feel you've stepped into their shoes, they'll be much more likely to step into yours. It's like opening a door. They need to know you're not barging in uninvited. You're knocking respectfully, offering them the choice to let you in. In Stoicism, one of the core teachings is that the only thing we control is our own reaction, not the actions or words of others. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, constantly reminds himself to let go of his ego and to focus on understanding rather than reacting. When we approach persuasion by saying, "You're right, that makes sense," we are practicing this Stoic principle. This is an act of detaching from your ego's need to be right. You're not conceding out of weakness, but because you've chosen to see things from their perspective, just as Epictetus advised. First, learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. When we seek to understand someone's perspective, we show that we are not threatened by differences of opinion. This is persuasion that flows from a place of wisdom, not pride. I recall another time when I had a heated debate with a close friend. My instinct was to counter every point they made, but I quickly realized we were going nowhere. Then I thought of Marcus Aurelius' teaching. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, which harms no one. I listened closely, said, "You're right, that makes sense," and instantly the argument melted into a constructive conversation. By aligning myself with truth, not ego, I opened the door to persuasion. If you're still watching, please like and comment below with a sign that you've noticed in your own relationships. Your insights might help others recognize similar patterns and foster healthier connections. 2. What would it take to make this work? Picture this. You're negotiating with a co-worker about a project, and things aren't going smoothly. They're focused on what's wrong, what won't work, and why it's too complicated. You're stuck in a frustrating cycle of no's. Now, instead of pushing back with your own points, try this. What would it take to make this work? This phrase is transformative. It moves the conversation from dead-end resistance to possibility. It's no longer about whether something will work, but how it could work. When you ask this question, you engage the other person in a collaborative process. You're not just telling them what to do, you're inviting them to contribute to a solution. I've used this phrase countless times, both in work and personal life, and I can tell you, it's like flipping a switch. Suddenly the other person is brainstorming with you instead of blocking your ideas. It feels less like a debate and more like teamwork. And that's the key, isn't it? People are much more likely to commit to something if they've had a hand in shaping it. Stoicism teaches that life is full of obstacles, but these obstacles are not to be viewed as barriers. Instead, they are opportunities to align our will with reality. In the same way, when we ask, what would it take to make this work? We're not resisting what is, we're working within the constraints of the situation. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This quote reflects a mindset of seeing challenges not as immovable blocks, but as parts of the path forward. By posing this question, you're signaling to the other person that you recognize the obstacle and you're willing to find a way around it, together. I remember a negotiation I was involved in where the other party was entrenched in their position, unwilling to budge. Instead of forcing my agenda, I paused and said, "I see where you're coming from. What would it take to make this work for both of us?" That one question changed everything. The resistance softened and suddenly we were brainstorming solutions together. In Stoic terms, I was practicing amor fati, the love of fate. I wasn't fighting against the situation or the other person's resistance. I was embracing it as part of the process, and that opened the door to cooperation. 3. Just imagine. Let's take a moment and play with imagination. Imagine you're sitting across from someone, trying to get them to see the benefit of your idea. You've laid out all the facts, explained the reasoning, but they're still on the fence. Now, instead of hammering them with more data, you say this: just imagine what it would be like if this worked out. Imagine the difference it would make. You see, people don't make decisions based on logic alone. Emotions drive decisions, and nothing taps into emotion like visualization. When you say, just imagine, you invite the other person to step into a future where your idea is a reality. They're no longer thinking about the risk or the effort, they're picturing the reward. This phrase works especially well when the stakes are high. When I was once pitching a proposal to a client who was hesitant because of the cost, I used this phrase. Just imagine the impact this could have on your business in a year, how much more efficient things could be, how much smoother your operations could run. By the end of the meeting, he wasn't just considering the cost anymore, he was imagining the success. That's the power of getting someone to visualize the outcome. The Stoics often emphasized the importance of perception. How we choose to view a situation determines how we respond to it. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." By asking someone to imagine a future outcome, we're encouraging them to shift their perception from fear and uncertainty to possibility and hope. In this way, we're applying the Stoic practice of preparing the mind for success. Just as a Stoic would prepare for adversity by imagining how they would handle it, you're helping someone mentally prepare for a positive outcome by visualizing it. You're planting a seed that says, "This is not just possible, it's real if you allow it to be." Let me tell you about another time I used this phrase, not in a business setting, but in a personal conversation. A friend was considering a major life change, moving to a new city, but was paralyzed by fear of the unknown. After listening to his concerns, I said, "Just imagine what your life could look like in a year if you took this leap. Imagine the growth, the new experiences, the opportunities." His entire demeanor shifted. Instead of focusing on the risks, he was now envisioning the rewards. In that moment, I felt like I was guiding him, as the Stoics say, toward the proper use of impressions. He no longer saw the potential move as something to fear, but as a path toward growth. 4. You have nothing to lose by trying. Fear of loss is one of the biggest barriers to persuasion. People fear making the wrong choice, fear wasting time, fear looking foolish. That fear creates paralysis. But there's a simple way to dissolve it. You have nothing to lose by trying. This phrase is a risk neutralizer. It reassures people that there's little to no downside, only potential upside. When I was younger, I remember trying to persuade a friend to take a chance on a new job opportunity. He was worried about leaving his comfort zone, afraid the new position might not live up to expectations. I simply said, "You have nothing to lose by trying. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to what you were doing." That reassurance gave him the courage to make the leap, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions of his life. This phrase works because it speaks to our innate aversion to risk. By eliminating or reducing the perceived downside, you open the door to possibility. Fear of loss taps into one of the most primal human instincts, the need for security. We are wired to avoid risk, often to the point where the potential for gain is overshadowed by the dread of what might go wrong. This fear keeps people stuck in their comfort zones, unwilling to make changes or take chances, even when the potential rewards are immense. By offering the phrase, "You have nothing to lose by trying," you provide a mental safety net, a way to shrink that fear of the unknown to something manageable. It subtly shifts the conversation from risk to opportunity, giving the other person the freedom to envision success without the shadow of failure looming large. The power of this phrase lies in its simplicity and its ability to challenge the mind's natural bias towards loss aversion. When you remind someone that the worst-case scenario often isn't as bad as they think, you effectively dismantle the mental barriers they've built up. It reframes the decision as a no-risk trial, allowing them to see the situation with fresh eyes. In my experience, even the most cautious individuals begin to see the potential upside more clearly when they're not weighed down by fear. This approach empowers them to step into new opportunities with the confidence that they can always return to familiar territory if things don't go as planned. But more often than not, they find themselves thriving in the new space they were once afraid to explore. The Stoics believed in embracing uncertainty and focusing only on what we can control. They acknowledged that much of life's outcomes are beyond our influence, and because of that, fear of loss often becomes irrational. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This aligns perfectly with the mindset behind the phrase, "You have nothing to lose by trying." Stoicism teaches us to let go of the things we cannot control and to act with courage when faced with uncertainty. In trying something new, whether it's a job opportunity, a relationship, or even a new approach to a project, the actual outcome is often beyond our grasp. However, what remains in our control is our effort, our attitude, and our willingness to engage with the world despite its uncertainties. To be Stoic is to recognize that there is value in the act of trying itself. The experience of taking that risk, the lessons learned, the character developed. Even if things don't go as planned, there is growth to be found in the challenge. The phrase, "You have nothing to lose by trying," is about stripping away the illusion of control over outcomes and focusing on what really matters, taking action in the present moment. I recall another moment when a friend was terrified of moving abroad for a career opportunity. He was fixated on all the possible downsides. What if he didn't like the country? What if the job wasn't what he expected? I told him, "You have nothing to lose by trying. Worst case scenario, you come back home, but think of all the things you'll have experienced." The Stoic perspective here is vital. Even the challenges or perceived failures we encounter along the way shape us. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacles we face are not hindrances, but opportunities for growth. The risks we avoid out of fear only serve to block us from becoming stronger, wiser, and more adaptable. By embracing the mindset that you have nothing to lose, you acknowledge that the real loss is in doing nothing at all, in standing still because fear has shackled you to the comfort of the known. 5. The best people do this. Social proof. It's one of the most powerful forces of persuasion. We are wired to follow the actions of others, especially those we admire or consider successful. When you say, "The best people do this," you're tapping into that desire for alignment with excellence. Think about the last time you made a decision because it's what someone you respected did. Maybe it was a choice in your career or a product you bought. We look to others for cues on how to act. I remember convincing a colleague to adopt a new strategy at work by simply saying, "This is the approach the top teams in our industry are using." He was on board instantly. It's not about manipulation. It's about showing that your idea isn't just a shot in the dark. It's tried and true by those who have already succeeded. People want to feel like they're part of something smart, something elite. The Stoics recognized the power of influence, not in the sense of following the crowd blindly, but in understanding the value of wisdom and virtue. Seneca, another great Stoic, once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This speaks to the Stoic belief that we should surround ourselves with individuals whose actions reflect wisdom, integrity, and rational thought. The idea that the best people do this aligns with the Stoic pursuit of excellence. It's not about superficial success. It's about striving for virtue by learning from those who embody it. When you persuade someone by saying, "The best people do this," you're subtly inviting them into a space where they can align themselves with the qualities they admire. In the context of Stoicism, the best people are not necessarily the richest or most famous, but those who live in accordance with nature, who are rational, wise, and virtuous. In my own life, there was a moment where I was hesitant to take on a new responsibility at work, unsure if I was the right fit. My mentor, who I respected deeply, said to me, "This is exactly what the best leaders in your field are doing right now." That shifted my perspective immediately. Instead of focusing on my fears, I started thinking about how this new role could help me grow and improve. Stoicism also teaches us that true success is not defined by the masses but by the quality of our thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you invoke the phrase, "the best people do this," it taps into the aspirational part of human nature, encouraging others to elevate themselves, not for external recognition, but for internal development. 6. I wouldn't be surprised if you... There's something incredibly powerful about suggesting someone is already capable of what you're asking them to do. It's called reverse psychology, but it's not about tricking someone. It's about handing them a compliment disguised as a challenge. Here's a scenario. You want to motivate someone to take action, but they seem hesitant, uncertain of their ability. You could push them, argue, or you could say, "I wouldn't be surprised if you already know exactly what to do here." This phrase plants the seed of confidence. It suggests they have the answer or ability within them already, which is far more motivating than trying to force them. When someone feels that you believe in them, they're much more likely to rise to the occasion. Stoicism places immense value on the inner strength of the individual. According to the Stoics, each of us has the capacity for rational thought and wise action. We just need to unlock it. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This means that self-mastery, self-awareness, and the belief in one's ability to make wise decisions are central to living a good life. When you tell someone, "I wouldn't be surprised if you already know what to do," you are appealing to their rational nature, that core belief that they already have the wisdom to act. It's a call to their inner Stoic, their capacity to rise above doubt and take rational, thoughtful action. I once had a friend who was struggling with a personal decision, torn between what he felt was expected of him and what he really wanted to do. I could see the internal conflict. Instead of telling him what I thought he should do, I said, "I wouldn't be surprised if you've already made the right decision. Deep down, you already know." That small statement made all the difference. He stopped seeking validation from others and began trusting his own judgment. In the end, he made a choice that aligned with his true values. This phrase taps into one of the most important Stoic principles, living in accordance with your true nature. The Stoics believed that each of us has an inner compass, a rational mind that, when unclouded by fear or external distractions, can guide us toward the right decision. By saying, "I wouldn't be surprised if you already know," you encourage someone to trust that part of themselves, to act from a place of self-confidence and clarity. Conclusion. Persuasion is not about overpowering the other person. It's about gently guiding them towards seeing the value in your idea, often by speaking directly to their emotions, their desire for validation, or their need for autonomy. Each of these phrases taps into a different psychological trigger, whether it's the fear of loss, the craving for belonging, or the need to feel understood. The next time you find yourself in a situation where you need to persuade someone, remember the Stoic approach. Control what you can, your words, your tone, your patience, and release what you cannot, their decision, their reaction. In doing so, you'll not only become a more effective communicator, but also a more grounded and resilient individual. And as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In persuasion, this means not using manipulation or coercion, but instead relying on wisdom, empathy, and understanding to guide the conversation. In the end, persuasion isn't about winning. It's about creating a space where both parties can come together and feel like they've gained something. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation where you need to influence, remember these phrases. They're subtle, they're respectful, and, when used thoughtfully, they're powerful. And the best part, you're not just persuading someone for the sake of it, you're building a bridge, one word at a time. Persuasion is not a battle of wills, It's an invitation to mutual understanding.